Ladies and gentlemen, I have John DePetro. John DePetro, thank you so much for calling. How are you doing?
Superior, honorary, supreme owl. It is an honor, and not even technical difficulties could prevent this appearance.
Oh, John, so many of the Super Towels were saying, oh, we hope John DePetro calls in, and look at it, you've done it for us. So tell me, John, we just heard Karen say she expects her case to be wrapping up on Tuesday. You saw Hank Brennan drop an absolute bombshell today with the Turtle Boy evidence coming in through Lucky. Just what is your reaction to just day after day of Hank Brennan outplaying the Reed defense?
I fail to see how the defense has even carved in any way into the narrative that Hank Brennan has put together. And I think that's inside that courtroom. And people should understand just what a remarkable job that he has done, and how inside that courtroom, he's the attorney that's been in front of the jury more than anyone else. He has established a very clear narrative that whatever happened outside at that flagpole. And so far, I don't see anything remotely close to the defense puncturing that in any way. So I think, if anything, it's very telling. The witnesses that they're putting up now that they have a chance, I don't see any of them changing the narrative, which is firmly established with this jury, and that is that what happened outside by that flagpole. And I think they're in a lot of trouble. And if there's a way she could take the stand, I think they'd actually consider it, but that'd be a question for your mom. I'm not convinced that she can even take the stand.
Yeah, and I'm not sure I bought her boilerplate response yesterday to the question, why does your defense model jury instruction have a sentence, the defendant won't be taking the stand? I think it's because she's not going to take the stand. Exactly,
yeah. And as I was on with Julie Grant on Court TV this morning, we were talking about, and again, you would know this, but if what we're led to believe is true, and that is, the comments and the clips that we've seen of her with discussing things with David Giannetti, and as you would know, if she did in fact tell David Giannetti that she did in fact quote clip him and she did hit him, and she knows that, then he can't put her on the stand knowing that she would lie on the stand, because that would be the big question. So I think I mean, at this point, based on what she, as much as you're exactly right, she said boilerplate, I think that's actually more telling.
Yep. Now, John, the consciousness of guilt jury instruction that Hank Brennan put forth, I think a lot of people saw it coming. It's bifurcated. It's got the destruction of evidence, probably the ring videos, and which we know 17 between 12:37 a.m. and 5:08 a.m. and then 1 at 12:35 p.m. But what about the consciousness of guilt for witness intimidation? I was in the courtroom when John's niece testified. It was heartbreaking, yes. But at least Turtle Boy wasn't there. You've been in the courtroom while Turtle Boy was there, while some of these moments were going down. This was a shocker today that Brennan is going to be doing this based on what Turtle Boy was writing about Lucky. What did you think of that?
I agree with you, and I was waiting to see if he was going to play clips, because there are clips. Obviously, he didn't. But clips, it's very graphic, where the turtle is going after him and calling him by name and literally like threatening him of what he's going to do. And I think that was really a shot across the bow. What we've noticed, Hank Brennan, and I hope people are picking up on this, is, all these things that he throws out, and he does it in a very subtle manner, whether it's, that Officer Dever saying that she contacted the FBI because they were trying to force her on perjury, or, little things. Marie Russell with the whole limo, and Alessi, and then also Officer Barros driving to the hotel. All of those things, they catch the defense off guard. And then when Brennan threw that out with Lucky, I think it was also a really good indicator for this jury of which he's built, and I can't stress this enough, he's built a very strong rapport with them. He's talked to them the most. They sense the way he has handled this case. They sense the way the witnesses speak to him, how the judge speaks to him. The fact that he threw that out, and then I have no idea why he is still allowed in the courtroom. I think it's an absolute. I don't understand why they would allow that. I haven't seen a lot of what he's posted, but he's like, smirking about it. He thinks this is a good thing. Anyone that watches some of the clips of how he was trying to go after him, that is intimidation. That's how they operate. You and I know. I mean, anyone that tries to step forward, your mom, with the truth, who tries to just shed some light on this in a logical way, it becomes an element of attack for them, and you put yourself on their radar. But in the end, what you have are a lot of good people that have stepped forward to try to do the right thing in the face of people that are trying to mock the system and trying to, for whatever reason, but help her get away with this. But I don't think she will.
Yeah, and I noticed a distinct change, John, between the first and second trial. I think Hank Brennan has been the big difference maker, but it also seems like that movement, the cult of personality around Karen, is simply eviscerated. It's almost gone.
Yes. Yeah.
And what I noticed, John, and what a lot of viewers, by the way, a lot of viewers want to, especially the Super Towels and Murder by Maestro and so many others, they want to let you know they have your back. But one of the questions we got earlier was, it seems like the movement, that Karen Reed clout chasing movement, is so decimated that we've now seen things like Turtle Boy trying to clout chase off you. So I want to ask you, I want to come back to the Karen implications of Aiden's witness intimidation, the consciousness of guilt. But you had a unique perspective. We had Aiden Kearney basically trying to get a rub off you from your streams.
Yes.
What was that moment like? Tell us about it.
If you step back, and there was someone very high up, I won't say who, but, contact me after that to say, and saying to me, step back, you have one person that's on court TV literally day and night. I mean, I'm on with Julie Grant in the morning, I'm on with Vinny at night, I'm streaming on Fox Nation, all of my platforms are thriving, and I've been in the courtroom more than anyone, and then you have that, and then you have someone that recognizes now he's not anywhere except someone who has a radio show just trying to hype crime. He had not been in the courtroom for weeks. He had lost control of the narrative. I know that various things, the way I would present what I saw in court, were having effect because then other people were mentioning that, and so. Anytime it's an annoyance, it's like a gnat or mosquitoes, right? Like mosquitoes, they don't kill us, but they are they pester us. But anytime that it does get annoying, I think of what, the witnesses, what their lives have been like, what they have gone through, how their lives have been threatened, the McCabe kids. It's so telling to me, and it's actually very grateful when the witnesses tell me, "Thank you so much for speaking up." I think I think it speaks volumes of the type of guy that Officer John O'Keefe was. And I've had the privilege of talking to Paul and obviously Peg, who's so dynamic. But the fact that on that morning in question, that Jen McCabe and Terry Roberts, they didn't hesitate. As soon as they heard he was missing, at 5 o'clock in the morning in a blizzard, they got up and immediately went to go and try to locate him. And I think, as much as that says a lot about them, I think it speaks volumes of John O'Keefe and the special relationship and friendship that he had. And they knew the importance of John to his niece, of which, and I had the honor of sitting next to you when the niece was on the stand. And people need to understand there was this, I thought, and you were inside, and that was a day for all towels worldwide, as you and I sat shoulder to shoulder in unison. in that. But what really people need to take away, that I think local media, and I'm going to put Ted Daniel at the top of the list, but what the local media didn't dwell on was hearing that young girl who lost her parents. And, it's going to be hard with, this is your uncle, and he's agreed to move in and take care of, be legal guardians to her and her brother. And she was 12 years old. And at that age, I mean, I have 2 daughters, I have 4 sisters. So it's, that's a time when a girl is going through the developmental stage. That's such like an important time for girls, young girls becoming women and their moms. And you have this woman, and to hear her say at age 12 that Karen would give her the cold shoulder, that Karen favored her brother, like that I just found that so repulsive. That Karen Reed, it just, you know what it was though? And I've heard this from friends of John, Karen was jealous of the relationship that John had with his niece. And in a short amount of time, they had forged a very strong relationship. And, few of us, I don't know how many people would even be in that situation where, you're going to do the best you can, not just for your parents who are now deceased, but for your uncle who stepped in to take care of you. And the fact that Karen Reed would give her the cold shoulder, ignore her. She was jealous of the relationship she had with John. She knew that Karen favored her brother. It's just so cruel to do to a young child in such a vulnerable position. To me, it just shows that, Karen Reed just is so morally bankrupt. And, despite the fact that she went and killed her uncle, but just putting, you would think that would, be a situation that you would want to do everything you can to nurture a young person who would just the unimaginable grief of losing both parents. But this whole element of them favoring one over the other, it's just so abhorrent.
It is, John, and people are going to naturally want me to ask you. We were both shoulder to shoulder. We saw the jury's reaction. I want to give you a chance to tell these folks, these listeners, what the jury is like when they're reacting. I saw it. I saw the disdain for Karen. I saw this barreling towards conviction weeks ago. Tell us about it, because so many people, I think, don't realize that jury is young. It seems like they were screened to make sure no one had any bias, and they really don't like Karen.
Right. Oh, I completely agree. And people need to understand, towels all over. People need to understand that in that courtroom, there'd be no reason to like Karen. I mean, they don't hear her talk, and she's on these clips talking about drinking. She's on these clips mocking Peg O'Keefe. She's basically making almost confessions of, I probably said I hit him, but not as many times as they say, but I have clipped him, and then they've heard those voicemails, of which is the behavior of someone unhinged. They saw the police dash cam video. They saw where she's, John, Karen, like, rolling around. And they see Jen McCabe and Kerry Roberts, of which basically the niece reinforced the testimony that they had given. And I liked how the niece even said Jen McCabe was pretty even-keeled that day. But there's a false narrative put out there that this jury loves Karen Reed because she's this person taking photos and selfies outside of the courthouse. But I'm looking for a reason. If I'm inside this morning, that woman that was at the waterfall who was so busy talking with Karen, I think that's the first positive witness we've heard about her. I've covered trials where the kids of the defendant sit behind them. I've covered trials where the spouse is sitting behind them. I've covered trials where all the coworkers were sitting behind the person. The people behind Karen Reed, as I described it to someone, they look like a casino crowd. They look like the type of people you'd see, the way they dress. It's always different faces. And the O'Keefes the O'Keefes look like normal people. The O'Keefes are very solemn. The O'Keefes all kind of sit exactly the same spot. I think the niece, the people absorbed how powerful that was. And the thing about the niece that people need to understand is, it's one thing that his mother lost a son, and it's another thing that, Mike Camerano lost a friend. But the niece and nephew, they were depending on him. Their life was turned upside down because of what? Because she, was an alcohol-fueled rage and backed up the car and went forward first and then backed it up. And I think, because people ask me what's the biggest difference, I think Hank Brennan has really drilled down that this, and I'm so tired of seeing people say it was an accident. They're not absorbing what happened. She went forward to give herself more runway. It'd be like, instead of just like slapping someone when your hand is like, inches from their face, like you winding it back. She went forward so she could really rev her car. That's not an accident. An accident is not going 24 miles an hour in reverse. What I believe is in that courtroom, the people need to understand, is he got out of that vehicle, and then she went forward and back, and then his phone stopped moving. There's no way to dispute that. This is not about, it's not about dog bites. And then he was found in a debris field filled with taillight. For people that are really paying attention, the truth is out there. For the delusional conspiracy crowd, it doesn't matter. They're not even looking for the truth.
Yeah, and John, tell me that bring us basically to yesterday. That motion for a mistrial by Alessi, he lost obviously. Yeah. It screamed to me not just desperation, but they know that this jury's going to convict. It's just a question of on what charge, not necessarily will they convict. Do you agree?
Right. Oh, yeah. And if you really look at that, you're great. I want everyone watching to understand your dedication, the way you sum things up, your knowledge of the law. It's an invaluable asset for those that are trying to follow the trial. I love when you sum things up. But if you notice, Jackson is whispering to Alessi before he speaks. Bob Alessi, by the way, I've talked to all the attorneys in there. This is nothing against him personally, but I kind of view him, he's almost like an errand boy. He does the stuff that Jackson and Eddie don't want to do, but they need someone to do it. And so I don't know what that was, the outburst, the temper tantrum. It's too bad the jury didn't get to see that, because that would have been even more effective if the jury could have seen that. But to me, that speaks volumes of just how poorly it's going. Is they actually wanted to take a shot, as much as it was a long shot, at trying to get the whole thing kicked. You notice you didn't see that last year. You don't do that if you think it's going well. You do that when you see the writing on the wall. These guys, they're not, they may be a lot of things. Alan Jackson may be a lot of things. He's not a stupid guy. And I want people that are watching, towels everywhere, to understand. They knew what it felt like last spring when they were at times winning. When they've had cases where they get a client off, they know what that feels like. This doesn't feel like that. They know what it would have taken to get her cleared, and they see that it's not happening.
I agree with you absolutely, and I've been trying to tell the towel viewers, and I think people are getting it. There's a lot of noise, but you can tell from the defense's actions that they're tactically off kilter. They're playing defense, not offense, and Hank Brennan has a command of the courtroom. When you go into that courtroom, John, that is his courtroom, and you can tell from the second you step in there. Are the jurors following him when he talks compared to the defense? Are the jurors on Hank Brennan's every word?
They are. And he's built a strong rapport with them. Notice the judge has never told him once he's going to speak up, raise his voice, nothing like that. He is so sharp. He gets what he needs. He knows what he's looking for. He knows what he's looking for. He knows what he's looking to get. He pulls it, and then he exits. And then he does little things to throw the defense off. Like, I love that yesterday when he said, like, over here, because as you posted, brilliantly, Barros was looking at the defense for guidance of, like, what am I supposed to do? We didn't rehearse. He was going to ask me about the hotel. I also would be curious, with all the clips you pull, I think Alan Jackson has some, I do, and I know I don't want to sound crazy, but I think he's got some hand signal. You notice he very quickly always puts his hand over his left eye. He brushes above his left eye. And I almost think it's like a third base coach or a first base coach in baseball where they're giving the signal that you're going to bunt or steal. He does that. And I think it's almost, I wouldn't be surprised, I should say. I don't know if it's true, but it's just odd. With witnesses up there that get in trouble, you see him, he puts his hand, his left hand goes over his left brow. And it's almost as if he's saying, like, stick to exactly what we had rehearsed. So I liked when Hank Brennan threw that in. I liked when Hank Brennan got Marie Russell talking about Alessi and the limo, and that Alessi actually wrote the report. I think it really shows and impacts the jury that look at the difference. I'm glad you asked that. And if you don't mind, what has not been covered effectively by the Boston media is the impact Dr. Wolf, the neurosurgeon of Miami, Supreme Trial will grant, Dr. Wolf, he's not the best witness of the trial. He's the best witness I've ever seen. Those jurors, in 10 years from now, if they were at Logan and they saw him, they'd go up to him and be like, I remember you. You were the brain surgeon. We don't hear brain surgeons that all the time. That was a unique experience. He was so phenomenal and so personal, and that he is such a gifted individual, Dr. Wolf. And he was there for Hank Brennan. He was there for the family. And he talked about, we've seen John O'Keefe's phone, we've seen his clothes, but he talked about his brain. And he talked about the damage to the brain, and he talked about how sensitive the brain is, that, you can put your finger through a brain like watermelon. He talked about death. He talked about it in a manner that only a doctor can talk about, and it was so impactful. And the jury was in awe of this guy. And I think you've got to stand back and, is this guy going to do and testify this way? But he was testifying for the prosecution. He was in such a rapport with Hank Brennan. It was just extraordinary. And then when Hank Brennan followed up with Dr. Welcher, he wasn't using a crash test dummy. He was the guy. That blue paint, I'm telling you, 20 years from now, if anyone in that jury hears about blue paint, that's what they're thinking about. People don't realize that this is Nuttall seems like a lifetime ago. Nuttall, we're going to go next week's 8 weeks. Nuttall seems so long ago to this jury. They're going to remember the blue paint. They're going to remember the slow motion of Dr. Welcher. That was so well done. Welcher, who has a PhD, he didn't say, it's on my office. He didn't say, here's two guys in Mexico. He did it. And dressing as John O'Keefe. I was in the courtroom. The jurors, you felt like you were watching video of what happened to John O'Keefe. And I also want to touch on this false narrative that some Karen Reed people are saying, we need to see it in full speed and blah, blah, blah. I push back on that. We're not accustomed to that because in our worlds, especially American, our technology, watch any sporting event, we're accustomed to the instant replay. We're accustomed to the slow motion. And we know that when something happens in slow motion, that is official, that's a better reflection of what happened, not less of a reflection of what happened. And so I think that was a really powerful moment when he did it. And I don't think they need to demonstrate, that the vehicle's going. The fact that they just did the slow, low, whatever it was, 5 miles an hour, 2 miles an hour of him in slow motion with the arm in the paint, it was, wow, that really broke through. That rattled the courtroom. And I'll say this, I just haven't seen the defense, this vigorous defense that Karen promised. I just haven't seen them even puncture anything that Hank Brennan put on.
Well, it does. You bring up so many points, John. It's a whirlwind of excellent points. I love talking to you. First, how fascinating was it to watch Bob Alessi try to get up there and almost learn how to do his first ever criminal defense cross by asking Dr. Wolf, what do you do in the morning? And then Wolf humanized himself with the cappuccino story. Second,
Yes.
a very similar thing happened today. You were talking about Alan Jackson and his cueing. Well, it was almost like Hank Brennan expected Alan Jackson to be coaching Lucky, and Brennan got Lucky to answer that question, that foundational evidentiary question about whether Lucky's family and friends had shown him the Turtle Boy report so Brennan could get into evidence. Jackson couldn't stop it. I noticed it happened very fast, and that goes to your point. And then the point that you closed with, which is this trial seems to be Hank Brennan not just like putting on a case, but putting on an exhibition in advanced trial strategy, and it's almost like this defense isn't suited to counter it. Did Karen run out of money? Did Alan Jackson and David Unetti never run up against a lawyer like Hank Brennan before? What is going on?
You know, a couple things, and these are, I've learned so much by being in the courthouse and talking to various people, and just, Brennan, he was very successful with a lot of pretrial motions. He understood what was on the line. I would also argue, you know, I was there at the hearing when Brennan wanted to get access to the raw footage of the docuseries, and I was in a unique situation. Let's just say I heard the defense actually saying it's 150 hours, and if he wants to go through 150 hours, like, be our guest. But what they underestimated was, because I talked to a friend of mine who's a tech, and he said, you know, they don't understand. Today with AI, you don't have to look through 150 hours. With AI, you could just program it to you just want the clips of Karen. And the clips of Karen were probably more like 10 to 12 hours. So I think, especially Jackson, he knows when it's winnable. He knows when it's going his way. He you know, I don't think he kids himself. I don't think he'd be successful if he did. I think they realize this time around. I'm willing to bet, you know, they haven't faced anyone like Hank Brennan in a long time. But I think Hank Brennan knew that a lot of this case was actually maybe going to be won with some of the pretrial hearings and not stuff inside the courtroom. And because he took that approach and because he streamlined it, that's why it's just such a different case. And unless you're there as you were, and he has a different presence. And I'll say this, you know, the jurors, no one's left. They're all there. What people have to ask themselves is, at the end of the day, are they going to let Hank Brennan down, the jury? He's been with them every step of the way. He is professional. He is courteous. He's well-spoken. He makes his points effectively. He doesn't talk down to them. He's not slippery. I right now, I find it very hard to believe they're going to let him down. And I also take issue with, I hear people, it only takes one. It only needs one juror to, I take exception to that. I've interviewed people who've been on juries, and they tell me, as soon as it went 10-2 and there were only two of them, and I talked to this guy, he was one of the two. He's like, oh, forget this. Because then he talked to the woman that was also a holdout. And she said, oh, forget it. If it's 10-2, forget it. I'll go along. And then now it's 11-1. And he's like, listen, I'm not going up against these 11 people. So I think majority wins out here. And I think right now the defense is really scrambling to come up with something to stop this. It's a game of momentum. And the momentum right now is just riding so strongly with the prosecution in Commonwealth.
I couldn't agree with you more. And John, tell me, one of the other things that defined this retrial was the close of the federal probe. It seemed to me, and I think you and I are uniquely positioned to discuss this, that this was a proxy war until the DOJ changed over and the new administration came in, and then Karen, Alan, and David lost their allies in the Boston DOJ, and Hank Brennan gained some allies. Am I wrong about that?
No, you're right. And it's also interesting. Last spring, they they had a skip in their step going into the courthouse. And, certain members of the media always wanted to trouble the members of the media. Well, there's a federal probe going on. Who knows what's going on? And, Jackson, Yannetti, they took pride in the fact that, there's a federal probe and there's something going on. And, I also haven't heard anyone mention that a lot of the Karen Reed supporters, for whatever reason, but a lot of them are actually Trump supporters. And there was even this running false narrative that Trump was aware of the case and he was going to, I know it sounds preposterous, but he was going to step in and help her out if he won and blah, blah, blah. And the first thing that happens is the new Trump U.S. attorney in mass comes in, and the first thing she does is there's no indictments and the investigation's over. So I think that also plays to, kind of taking the wind out of the sails. I think they used that as leverage. They used it as leverage with Lally. They used it as leverage with the judge. They had a certain confidence about them, and even arrogance, I'd say, in mentioning this other proceeding that was going on. And it did have people wondering, is there something going on? And I'm not even talking about the lunacy that people were saying at any moment the FBI was going to surround the courthouse and start arresting all the witnesses. We know that never happened. But the legs being taken out, I think right now, if we had truth serum, Alan Jackson knows their best shot was last spring with Lally, that everything broke their way from, the Commonwealth presented the case the wrong way. They were almost playing defense. There was no buffer zone. Those people were everywhere. There was just a lot of chaos. The Commonwealth kind of underestimated what they were dealing with. I think now they yearn for those. Remember what it was like, and the hi-fi, and the people dancing with the pom-poms and walking her up to the steps. And Alan Jackson, he would do a walking press conference on the way to the courthouse. Then he controlled the courtroom. Make no mistake about it. Adam Lally is a really nice guy, and I have a lot of respect for him, and I think the world of him. But Alan Jackson was the superior attorney, and he doesn't have it this time. He's not what I was trying to figure out who's the king of the court. And Hank Brennan, Alan Jackson must be telling people, I haven't run into anybody like this in a long time. Because you don't run into anybody like this that often.
Well, and Hank Brennan was sneaky because he was always in federal court, and so I can see how he snuck up on Alan Jackson. Sorry, to your point, John. I could see it.
Yeah, and that's thrown them, and they underestimated the use of those clips. They underestimated, I think, some of the damaging things she said, because I'm pretty sure that they had final say over anything that was going to air, but they weren't thinking, what about the footage that they didn't use? And they didn't think that the people that made the docuseries, maybe they thought they wouldn't hand it over. Maybe they didn't realize the extent of the damage of things that Karen said. But getting back to Alessi, and I do like him, Your Honor, and he's so long-winded. And he is having the time of his life. If there's anyone enjoying it, it's Bob Alessi. He's never been involved with anything like this. He's never been given so much latitude. I like when he asks the question and the witness says, well, of course. And then he says, exactly. as if that's where he wanted them to go. Bob Alessi, as good as he is, as I've told people, I was telling someone last night, this guy, you ask him what time it is, and he starts explaining how to build a clock. If he can give you a 20-minute explanation instead of a 1-minute explanation, he'll always opt for the 20-minute. But here's what I see when I would sit there 6 weeks in that courtroom with the jury. They'd tune him out. They would tune him out. If they had cell phones, they'd go on their phone. They can't go on their phone because they don't have phones with them. But they would zone out. And never mind, sometimes he's doing it with the lights down. I mean, it's just, they get tired. And the jury right now, I think the judge is smart to give them tomorrow off because they're tired. This is a lot. I've talked to people on jurors, and I actually have to go in a minute, but I've talked to people on juries that, they've told me that their normal job wasn't as intense as jury duty was. like jury duty, they had to be on their game. This is, there's note taking. You got to pay attention at all times. Not everyone has jobs like that. Not everyone has careers like that. The jury, I believe, is going home exhausted. And therefore, I want to point out one more quick thing. The longer this goes on, the more things like the blue paint, the more like the Karen clips stand out because it drags on. The other thing I want to point out that I haven't heard anyone else say, but maybe you have, but every time Hank Brennan, every time they have a witness, they're allowing him to get up, he's actually strengthening his case with the Commonwealth. So as much as some people want him to put on Brian Higgins, Brian Albert, Proctor, blah, 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 Hank's getting bigger. He's getting stronger. He's not getting weaker. He's showing a different versatility that he has to the jury. He's showcasing his skills and talents with the jury. Unless they have a rabbit to pull out of their hat, I think they're in a lot of trouble right now.
Oh, yeah. You nailed it, John. Every witness the defense puts on becomes a piece of Hank Brennan's case. And also, yes. I noticed your point with Bob Alessi, spot on. Alessi, after 5 weeks, he finally lost it with one of the witnesses and said, Your Honor, he's pointing at my hands. Literally every single analyst, I'm sure the jury was like, oh, this man is not a serious lawyer. But yes,
yeah.
John DePetro, I think people were saying throughout the comments in the chat, you are appreciated. You are an excellent analyst. You're an excellent reporter.
I am honored to be a towel. I want people to know I come across a lot of content. Your content is original. It is brilliant. It's insightful, but it's entertaining. It's hilarious. You have a brilliant legal mind. You have an entertainment value to you that is unmatched, and you just have so many fans. And thank you so much. It was a privilege being on.
Of course, John, you are a busy man. Enjoy the rest of your day. People can find you at John DePetro Show on Twitter, and I'm going to work on the phonetic pronunciation of your name. I'm from Massachusetts. What can I do?
It's fine. It's fine. Thank you very much, Supreme Towel.
All right. Be well, John. Thank you.
Right. Thank you.
Oh, Little Towels. Let me turn the gain down. What did you think of that, Little Towels? Who else, Little Towels, would fight through that level, folks, of technical difficulty other than John DePetro? John DePetro put in the effort. We got it. 3 or 4 false starts, but we adjusted on the fly. We got it done. What a great interview. Oh, and John had such nice words for the Little Towels. That bolstered Little Towels. Did you see me? Oh, sis, you'll definitely want to rewatch that. And what's nice is, and listen, this is a live podcast. It is not TV. There's bound to be technical difficulties. We got through about, 15 or 20 minutes of false starts, and then we had a great interview with John. And how great was it that the new towel microphone was working so I could turn up the gain on the microphone so that we basically had a high-quality audio interview with John DePetro. That was great. So listen, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much, Richard and Joanne Hogan. We're going to take a few minutes here to just collect ourselves, talk about that interview, welcome some new towel friends. We're almost at, what is it now? I don't even know. I'm afraid to even ask what the number is. I think it's somewhere near 23,500, ladies and gentlemen, watching on the Towel X. I'm afraid to refresh this feed. I'm wondering what this number is going to go to. Oh, I refreshed the wrong one. Hold on. That's why. So it's probably at even higher now. What do you think we got to, ladies and gentlemen? 23.5? That's my guess. I'd like to see it, ladies and gentlemen. But yes, Little Towels, we got a lot going on. We're going to do our recap. I'm a hands-free towel now. John is a great guest. That was wonderful. It went great. We learned a lot. I was a little towel. You were Little Towels, ladies and gentlemen. What a day. Yes. And 23.6. I was almost right. I guess 23.5. All right, ladies and gentlemen. Ted Daniel, eat your heart out. We beat you again, sir. We beat you as John DePetro enjoyed the opportunity. But yes, everything John had to say was so in line with what I was feeling about the case. And listen, I had told you all before the show, before the interview, part of the reason I was so interested to talk to John is we're working all the time. So when we move in passing, we're like, oh, it's so good to see you. And we very quickly chat, but we don't actually get to sit down and explicate the case. That was the first time John and I had sat down and explicated the case. And now listen, I know a lot of you are interested in what Little Towel has to say, but But as you can see, I wanted to give John, except where I wanted to talk about the Bob Alessi thing because that was funny. I wanted to give John as much time to say whatever he wanted to say. And as you could see, I think he really liked it. He was grateful for the opportunity to say, oh, yes, and then this and this and this. Oh, that was great. Just a wonderful guest, ladies and gentlemen. That marks our second interview on Towel Street.